Dan Romanelli, former agent for Bugs Bunny, thanks to his 23 tenure at Warner Brothers, has returned, and I wanted to ask him some questions regarding Tweety Bird, as well as his rollout of the WB store and a lot of merchandise that happened therein. And we also wanted to congratulate Looney Tunes Cartoons for being nominated for 2 brand new Emmys this year. So, of course, you realize this means podcast.
Are you ready, eager young space cadets?
Meep, meep.
I saw a potent pig.
Long is the limit!
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
Hello, and welcome to This Means Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Graves, and with me today, it is my honor and pleasure to bring back to the show Dan Romanelli. Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for inviting me again.
Absolutely. It is a joy to have you, and I love hearing these stories. You have had a wonderful career surrounded by Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny specifically. You were instrumental in creating the Warner Brothers consumer products, and that is still a thriving brand today. It encompasses all of the DC heroes as well as Looney Tunes and Harry Potter, Friends, everything that is under the Warner Brother umbrella. And you were also a big advocate for Space Jam back in the day, and you got that rolling as well. We talked about it on the last show. So I'm here for all new stories, all new adventures with you, and I was so grateful to have on the creators of Carrot Blanca a couple of weeks ago, Tim and Julie Cahill. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend it, listeners. It was one for the record books. We got into the depth and everything that went into making that show. It was wonderful. And Dan was instrumental in that process as well, as he was there to hear the pitches and to react to them and get that ball rolling. So Dan, starting off, how are you?
I'm good. Very much appreciate the invitation. I always love talking about Looney Tunes because, you know, the expression, that's all, folks. Well, it's never that's all. There's so much more, you know, folks, in terms of the stories and you know, that it will always remain in my life such a significant part of my career, such a fun part. And as you know, Space Jam was such a highlight for me, and it was a great opportunity because nobody, frankly, it was turned down. And as you know, and I won't go into that story again, but David Falk called me and said, you know, who was Michael Jordan's manager, and he said they turned us down. And I said, well, first of all, why didn't you tell me you were going to propose that? And if Michael's willing to do it, let me try to lead that charge and reinstate it. And I had a lot of help from Bob Daly, who was the CEO of Warner's, because he was a huge Michael Jordan fan. Absolutely. And he would have done it in a heartbeat, and he did. But we got everyone on the bandwagon to do it. And I have to say, I did not see the second Space Jam. And
okay. Well, it did well amongst audiences, and
yes,
it was a delight. I thought they did it really well. It was a bit more, you know, all encompassing for Warner Brothers IP, not just Looney Tunes. And, you know, LeBron did a serviceable job as the lead. I don't want to compare Michael Jordan to LeBron here, but, you know, I thought it was a serviceable movie, and it was great seeing Looney Tunes back on the big screen, as always.
Yeah, I know we're here to talk about Tweety, but I have to tell you one story. I was invited to the premiere, and I was glad to get an invitation because I figured, well, geez, I wouldn't have gotten an invitation if I didn't push through the first one, you know, because it was, you know, it was turned down.
Right.
And I'm sitting there, and, you know, there's so many changes at Warner's. I know very few of the people there now because I've been gone, you know, 20 some odd years or more. And one of the older producers came over to me, not that old, you know, he came over compared to me, not that old. And he came over to me, and it was crowded, and there were all kinds of events going on and partying. It was before the film. Mm-hmm. And he said, how does it feel, Dan, to know that none of us would be here today celebrating if it wasn't for you pushing through the first movie. And I said, you know, it does feel good. I'm sorry that you're the only person who recognizes that, but you know, but it nonetheless, it felt good at the time. It was very celebratory for me. So I was glad to see that it happened.
Yeah, and again, as a fan of Space Jam, thank you for getting that made and pushing that through, because, you know, that was a big part of my childhood, but also, you know, the legacy of Looney Tunes, and that's how it's lived on through kids and through that film. And, you know, sports movies in general don't get a whole lot of acclaim, but, you know, that one really pushed the boundary on, like, live action animation, doing new things with technology, and, you know, putting the Looney Tunes in the forefront again, which hadn't been done for some odd 30 years before then. So, you know, it was great to see.
I remember that there was an article that was published in the Washington Post, I think, about the 20-year reunion or the 20-year anniversary, and I remember telling them that it did very well all around the world. And one of the international distribution guys said, well, it was lucky. We were just lucky. And I said, I totally disagree. It wasn't lucky. It was that Michael Jordan is so iconic and so popular around the world. And so is Bugs Bunny. You put them together, you have a good story, and it worked. That wasn't luck. That was, you know, good production, good and great actors, you know, which was Jordan. And Jordan played himself. He wasn't an actor. He played himself. That's why it was central casting for him.
Yeah. And, you know, there's some really fun cameos in there as well. But moving on from Space Jam, I do want to quickly shout out the team over at HBO Max for their work on Looney Tunes cartoons. It's headed by Sam Register over there and Pete Brownguard. Did you ever work with Sam Register, by the way?
I did. Sam is great. He's a terrific talent, and he wasn't head of animation when I was there, but he rose to the top, and deservedly so. And he's a big fan of all things Looney Tunes and as well as many, you know, and now I think they're doing Animaniacs again, aren't they? Or
they are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's an interesting story too, by the way, of how that happened. Not Animaniacs, but Tiny Toons. Did we ever discuss that?
We haven't yet. Yeah. By all means, because Tiny Toons is being revived as well. For Warner Brothers Animation.
I have to give you a story about Tiny Toons if I haven't told you this before. So Brad Globe, who's a dear friend and who replaced me, he was at Amblin and he worked for Steven Spielberg. And I thought to myself that, God, if we could come up with a junior version of Looney Tunes, you know, it could be huge financially for us. And you know, Looney Tunes was getting a little dated. It was very successful, but you always want to reinvent something. And so I said to Brad, is there any chance Steven would be interested in a younger version of Looney Tunes, and we call it Tiny Toons? You know, I didn't say Tiny Toons, but I said something like, you know, Baby Looney Tunes or whatever. Not even Baby Looney Tunes. It was, you know, more for adult and older kids. And so he said, let's pitch it to him. We mentioned it to Steven. Steven said he would be open to it because he was a fan. And we then went out and I think it was Gene McCurdy became president of Warner Animation, and she invented, with a lot of help and Steven's help as well, Tiny Toons. It became a huge success. And for me, I had an ulterior motive because I had a lot of old deals that I inherited on Looney Tunes from companies that really weren't qualified to do great licensing. And so Tiny Toons gave us an opportunity to kind of go out and do a whole new set of licenses. And it was great, and it was very successful. And so I was thrilled. And that really started with Brad Globe, you know, who replaced me ultimately, and myself. and it was very well done, and it lasted many, many years. And as you said, they're doing another version, I think, of that.
They are, yes, and Spielberg has a big hand in it. So it's under good hands. It's under good leadership over there. And they had a concept art reel that played at Comic-Con this year. So we got to see some of the character designs, and it's an evolution. The characters are now in the full university. So they've graduated elementary school and high school.
Super.
Yeah. But thank you. That was instrumental in my childhood as well. I know a lot of fans of Tiny Toons that are indebted to you for that, and Spielberg and everybody. So I'm super excited about this, revitalization of that. But also, I enjoy watching the classics, the original series. I don't want to call them classics just yet, but they're on Hulu, and you can check them out immediately. Yes. And highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, Jean McCurdy, I don't know if you've ever interviewed her, but she really ran a great organization, the Warner Animation team, and Tiny Toons and Animaniacs was terrific, and it was kind of irreverent and fun, and
it's the best.
Yeah, the interesting thing was, from a licensing point of view, initially Tiny Toons, I thought was going to be massive, but what happened was it did very well. No one, even Steven, obviously didn't need a lot of money, but he made a lot of money from it. But as we did too. But what happened was it was a huge explosion for our Looney Tunes business because people realized that it paid homage to Looney Tunes.
Yes.
And they wanted more Looney Tunes stuff as a result of that. So we had massive numbers of success for Looney Tunes. And I give a lot of credit to Tiny Toons for helping that. And then ultimately Animaniacs was big too. But, it really reinvented Warner animation, so.
I don't think there was a better conduit for that reinvention. You had the, junior versions of these characters, but it was fresh. It was new. It was, taking 90s pop culture and, flipping it on its head and doing parodies. And, no one is as good as parody as Looney Tunes. That's my opinion. So, to see Tiny Toons take a whack at it and excel too, I thought that was really great. So
getting back to Tweety, because we don't want to lose the main focus, right? She, the argument always about was it a he or a she, and I think I told you this last time. The man who invented Tweety, Friz Freleng, who also did the Pink Panther,
yes.
And, but he was always being challenged that Tweety was a girl. And he once did, and maybe, I don't know if I told you this in the last story, he once created an animated cell of Tweety in the men's bathroom with a lineup of other men at a urinal. From the back, you saw all these people just to prove that he was a male, and yes. I, coveted that animation cell, but I could never get it. And I keep on reaching out to his daughter who, to say, please, I'll buy it. I want it in my collection, so.
Yes, that's hilarious. On the podcast, it's come up multiple times as far as the sex of Tweety, but because he's a bird and he was put on a lot of female clothes, a lot of women grew up with him on them in sparkles and pink and all that stuff.
Right.
So he's now become an androgynous icon.
Right. Tweety would be, his masculinity would be insulted by all of it, but he was the only character we had that we could do girls' product from because he was so cute and adorable. And,
just don't get too close to him because he has a mallet behind him.
Right. Well, so do many women,
It's very true. I wanted to go back to congratulating the Looney Tunes team on their Emmy nomination real quick, as they were nominated for both Outstanding Musical Direction and Composition for an Animated Program, and that is in part to Joshua Mosier and Carl Johnson, both are which phenomenal talents that they had on these Looney Tunes shorts, and they did bring back a full orchestra that they had to, create these scores for and with, and it's been so long since Warner Brothers had that at their disposal, and for them to do that for these, it felt really special. So I'm grateful for them, and I'm glad the Emmys are recognizing that.
That is great.
Absolutely. And they were also nominated for Outstanding Voice Performance in an Animated Program. And this is Eric Bauza, who does the voice of Bugs Bunny, Tweety Bird, as we're talking about, and so many others. And this is his 6th Emmy nomination and hopefully first win this year. So fingers crossed. But yeah, like the talent over there is just outstanding and remarkable. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have these shorts on the streaming service, and I wish they would release them on physical media so I could, have them forever.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to have this reinvigoration, whether it's Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, or these new shorts, full of Looney Tune humor, and there's just so much reverence out there for these characters that it's wonderful to see.
The other person you should interview at one time or another is George Doherty. Do you know George?
George Doherty, he is the guy that does the
Bugs on Broadway.
Yes, Bugs on Broadway.
Yeah.
I haven't reached out to him yet, but I should definitely do that.
Yeah, because he really helped a lot with, putting the real orchestra underneath, because these cartoons are all evolved with classical music. It's what taught kids like me when I was young, 500 years ago, classical music, because we learned it from the Looney Tunes, cartoons.
Exactly. We wouldn't know who Friends List is without
it. And I remember the first time we did it, it was at a theater, a Broadway theater, and Chuck Jones was there, and huge standing ovation after the first orchestra. It was the live orchestra underneath the cartoons, and it was reconfigured to do a live orchestra, which is unusual. And then it traveled all around the world. He was very successful with it. He's a great guy. I think he's lives in the Bay Area, so he might be an interesting person for you to interview.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to him. One of the things that Julie mentioned was that there used to be a Warner Brother archive, and in it you could go in and you could see props and different cardboard cutouts of these characters interacting in certain ways. And one of them was a classic piano, and they had Daffy Duck from Carrot Blanca seated in the seat. Do you remember that?
I don't know, but I think I heard about it, but I don't remember seeing it, But yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm really bummed out that I missed out on this archive tour that they used to have at the studio. And I guess it was a smaller version of the Warner Brothers store that would then be expanded globally.
Right.
What was it like back then in the 90s, getting the Warner Brother product in malls?
Initially it was very easy, because when we first opened, we opened at the, Beverly Center and then 3 other cities in Washington, D.C. and was Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. I'm trying to remember, Chicago, I think, in one other city. But everywhere we opened, it was like a massive success because it was irreverent. We had a much bigger screen than Disney had in their store. And I always wanted to open when I, look, we were, the second-class citizen compared to Disney. Disney,
right?
I mean, they invented this business. I copied them. In fairness, and they were and probably still are the greatest. But we did very well when we opened our store. We revved it up, so we had a much better video wall. And we did more adult because we learned that we appeal to adults.
Yeah.
And, Looney Tunes was not really, the kids grew up from Looney Tunes. It wasn't no longer regularly on TV. It was in syndication. And whenever we showed product to the kids, they were kind of yawning. But when we showed it to adults, they loved it. So we decided we have to have more adult stuff in the store. And the adult stuff blew out. And it worked. It worked very well, and for a while, and it kept on growing and growing very successfully. But, like trees, they grow so high and then they stop growing. And retail, we needed to refresh with different movies and stuff like that. And Disney, always creates multiple movies and merchandisable, product. And Warner's didn't, for that matter. It was limited. But that's why I think it got a little soft. But while we were building the stores, we ramped up to over 100. It was doing that well. And then it got soft. And then we had to, we realized we didn't have enough, movies and TV shows to maintain the kind of business. Now, and Harry Potter was very successful, obviously, and other products like that. But
Sure.
And Space Jam was really necessary for us to produce, successful results in the store, so I could keep my job.
That's what it's all about at the end of the day. But no, the store is definitely a landmark of consumer products within Warner Brothers. And I know that there's a lot of people that still miss those, brick and mortar that you can actually go to and see the characters and, have that product in front of you. But now everything is online. Even the Disney stores have closed and now they're online.
Right.
So it's an ever-changing process and business for sure. But you were, it was a landmark time, and, I couldn't be more thrilled to have grown up with Warner Brothers stores. So again, thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for your business and your interest.
He's still going strong today. As you can tell, I have a Warner Brothers Acme sweater on right now.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. There,
you know what I have right next to me? I have from the studio store the Space Jam Michael Jordan statue here.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Someone offered me $5,000 for it, and I said, "No, I don't think so." So he's here with me. He's here with me all the time.
He's priceless.
Yes.
So, also, were there any fun merchandise opportunities that Tweety was on that you signed off on that you were like, I don't know if this is going to sell, but this is a really unique idea? Or do you remember anything with the Looney Tunes that was
well, I remember in the studio store, because we didn't have enough female appealing product. We knew Tweety appealed to women. Mm-hmm. So we did a litany of what they call SKUs, stock keeping units.
Sure.
With Tweety's design on it, and all of it in the beginning sold out. It was like a huge success with women, because guys aren't going to buy Tweety, but girls loved it for little girls, and women loved it because they grew up with Tweety. So Tweety probably would have been pissed because I'm a man, but it worked, and it worked great. And I remember that we were all very, very pleased and there were the people who designed it, who worked for the stores, were really talented and smart and knew the kind of designs that would work. And we had a lot of fun. We thought for a while that we didn't have that appeal to women. And I remember there was one story, let me tell you about that. There was these French brothers who had called, and they had a store called Too Cute.
Okay.
They had these incredible jackets, and it was all Disney product, and they were selling them for like $500, $600, $700 a jacket. They were amazing. Wow. And I'm trying to remember their names right now. And they were French family. Mm-hmm. And and I stopped them at the licensing show because one was walking around with these characters. And I said to him, the Guyettas, the Patrick Guyetta and Tony Guyetta. And by the way, this Tony Guyetta is a genius in terms of his designs and everything. And I stopped him at the licensing show. And I said, you know, you always have these Disney things. And I've been to your stores and you sell Disney all the time. How come you never do Warner Brothers? And he says in his French accent, you would give me a license for Warner Brothers? And I said, with pleasure, I would give you a license. And what does Disney pay you? He says, they pay me nothing. I don't have a license with Disney. I just produce their product and sell it in the store. I said, well, that sounds like a better deal. So he was ripping Disney off, but he was selling like crazy. So we made a deal with him. And the stuff we put in the stores was just blowing out. It was on fire. And then we started putting his designs in Walmart and Target, and that was blowing out too. And I think they're geniuses. They do beautiful product. I don't know if they still have their store, and it was in Hollywood.
Okay.
But
I'll have to look that up.
But Tony Guyetta has just a huge. He took me once up to his office and he showed me all the Warner Brothers stuff, the Looney Tunes characters that he did design work with. I said, you know, I love it all. And in fact, a funny story, when I got from my first wife, I got, you know, ultimately divorced, but I was separated. And I moved into the Hilton, not the Hilton, the Universal, I guess it was the Hilton. It was Universal Hotel over at right, Universal Studios.
Right up the road.
For a month. And I went away for a week and told the hotel that, you know, I'm keeping my room, I'm paying for it, but I'm going to be traveling. When I came back, everything was gone from my closet. And I told the manager, you know, what happened here? And they were embarrassed, and they somehow rented it to someone in the room. And the guy said, oh, look at all the stuff someone left. I'm going to take it all. And he took all of my Too Cute stuff. And ultimately they got everything back but the Too Cute stuff, you know. So I was really mad at the hotel. But the bottom line was that they're brilliant, the designers of merchandise. And this Tony Guyetta is a genius when it comes to the Looney Tunes characters. And we, frankly, made a lot of money buying his product and making him legitimate as a licensee, you know. So.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Outside of the fact that you lost a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
That's wonderful. I'm definitely going to be looking into that company and seeing if they're still around, because I'd love to see their product.
Interesting just to show all his artwork, you know, that Tony Guyetta has some very interesting, fascinating artwork. He's a very talented guy.
I would love to put it on the Instagram and on the blog if you want to like have it displayed somewhere. That Looney Tunes
and
content.
It's not only Looney Tunes, but you do Looney Tunes primarily, but it's other characters as well. But
okay,
you know, but it was funny because when I chased him down at the show, I said, I know you do all these deals with Disney. How about doing with us? He says, well, I don't pay Disney. So
he's just making all that profit.
He was smart. You know, he was too small at that time for Disney to care about it, I guess. You know, you go after the big guys, not the little ones, you know.
Right. Tim Cahill also brought up that he did some pitch art for Spy Jam and some other films that didn't get quite made over at Warner Brothers after the success of Space Jam. And I was wondering if you had any stories about the unproduced Looney Tunes projects.
Well, there were a lot of projects that, you know, I would always pitch on, whether it was Looney Tunes or the DC heroes, or, you know, because for me, it was all about exposure, you know, moves the needle and gets sales and everything. But, you know, after Space Jam, we were always pushing management to do more Looney Tunes. But then we did that movie Back in Action, if you remember, it didn't work. And in fact, I did an animated cell. I don't know if I ever showed that to you, with Alan Horn putting banging over rabbit season, duck season, and Romanelli season, and there was Elmer Fudd with a rifle, a shotgun looking for me, because I didn't produce it, I didn't write it, right. It was done by Joe Dante, and it actually wasn't a bad film, but it died. It died at the box, and I think part of the reason it died was home video, right before it came out, put a collection of Looney Tunes videos out, literally a week before the movie opened. Everyone thought, oh, geez, that must be the movie, and blah, blah. And they bought a lot of the videos. But then when the movie opened, it just didn't get good reviews, and it never got any business and everything. The only good thing about that movie for me was I had a cameo in it.
That's right. Was it at the casino?
Yeah, no, it was like at the end of the movie, I was Bug's agent, and Bugs Bunny got in the car with me, and we drove off, and I was on the phone. I said, I got to go. Bugs is here, and I wished I had done that for Space Jam, because that movie everyone saw, back in action. I called it lack of action, just that nobody saw, So, but it's not a bad movie,
I like it, and I saw it, and
Martin was in it. Yeah.
I did like the marketing, because you had a parody of James Bond, because the Die Another Day was coming out that same month, actually.
Right.
And so they did a 007 parody, and the 007 flipped upside down to become an LOO for Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Back in action. I thought that was
Joe Dante was the director.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done, he did a lot of, like, he directed Gremlins, if you're the first Gremlin. So can I tell you Gremlins. A quick Gremlin story?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So that was my first movie, my first merchandising movie. And I made a huge deal. In fact, Brad Globe worked for Spielberg. It was Steven Spielberg Presents. And I think Chris Columbus wrote it. Mm-hmm. And he went to NYU, and it was his first movie that he wrote. And it was Ghostbusters came out 2 weeks ahead of us, and then we came out with Gremlins. And we made a massive deal with Hallmark to do all the stores. They had the Gremlins in there. And we gave them the script, and we showed them everything, and we had all kinds of great product, plush product, this and that and everything. And Hallmark was looking at it as a very sweet, in those days they didn't have ratings, but it would be a PG movie, they thought. And it turned out probably to be PG-13, because the one scene that was really scary was with one of the Gremlins in the microwave, where and it blew up, right?
That entire kitchen scene is great, from Do You Hear What I Hear until the end of that with the microwave. Right.
And so I was in the screening room when Joe ran that, and Joe Dante and Mike Fennell, who was the producer, were looking at Brad and me, because they knew that we would be, panicked when we saw that scene, because it was like a horror movie. And at that point, and I said, oh shit. And we asked them to change it, and they wouldn't, and eliminate it, and they wouldn't. So we said, all right, what the hell? So the movie, Hallmark was doing so much with it that we gave them the right to have a screening for the movie, right?
Okay.
And in Kansas City, and the on Sunday before the movie opened, and on that Sunday night, Barry Reardon, who was the president of distribution, called me up, and he said at home, he says, so Dan, I think you're going to have a problem tomorrow. I said, why? And he said, because Hallmark had the screening, and a 7-year-old girl ran out of the theater during that scene screaming.
Oh, no.
And I said, oh, okay, well, one girl. He says, no, you don't understand. And he said, Dan, it was Hall's granddaughter.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I said, oh, shit. And I said, thanks, Barry. And the next day, and Brad had the same problem, I get a call from the top guy at Hallmark.
Sure.
just reading me the riot act. And I'm in my drawer, I have been at Warner's like 4 months, and I'm in my drawer looking for my CV. Where's I got to start getting another job here. But as it turns out, I had a, great run with Hallmark. They were very wonderful partner. And when I retired, they invited me out for a party, and I told the audience that story, and they all laughed hysterically because I don't think anyone really cared about that lady became ultimately an executive and whatever, but they all loved that story. But at the time, Brad and I were just beside ourselves because we thought, that was a short career.
I'm sure that was terrifying at the moment.
Right, yeah.
You're like, oh no. So with Gremlins, you had Chuck Jones doing a cameo, and then Gremlins 2, you had Chuck doing actual animation for the opening with Bugs and Daffy. How did that come about, or was that talked about prior?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Joe Dante was, I think, very friendly with Chuck, But, so that was, the beginning of my career, and I thought it was the end.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't the end. I'm glad you went on to do such wonderful things with the intellectual property of Looney Tunes.
Right.
And I'm glad that, we're here still talking about it, and you're doing wonderful consulting within the same entertainment realm and getting other companies up and running too. So that's great.
And I've got, I'm having fun right now. This has nothing to do with Looney Tunes, but we helped put together a deal for Clint Eastwood with Sideshow. I don't know if you're familiar with Sideshow.
The action figures.
Yes, and did this with Dan Kletsky, who was my general counsel at the Consumer Products Division, and surprisingly, Clint's never let me do any licensing over the multiple years I was there. But for this one, he because there was a lot of fake stuff out there, and his lawyer wanted to clean it up. And the best way to clean it up is to have the legitimate collection. And Sideshow does a brilliant job. And it's just being introduced now. And all of his action movies are going to be rolled out, from him, Dirty Harry to, Pale Rider, The Man with No Name, all those great movies. And it's nice to see a collectible thing like that happen, So I still have my fingers in the pie, so to speak, doing those kind of things, and I so enjoy it,
Yeah, no, that's great. I also love the spaghetti westerns, so I'm definitely gonna have to look into seeing some of those figures when they come out.
Yes,
and maybe reenact the whole ending of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on my desk.
Well, if you go now online and you look at the Sideshow collection, you'll see them there, and they're very excited about the reaction to it. He's such a global phenom, that people love him. So,
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. I don't have anything else. If you want to plug anything that you're doing, or if you want to let the people know where to find you online, if you want them to, now's the time, Dan.
What else can I plug? I'm working on some more Clint Eastwood stuff that I hope happens. And I always like working with people who are older than me. There's less and less of those people.
Such is life, but that's admirable. I hope you find all of them.
And and I have a few Looney Tunes projects that I still would like to do. But I'm also working on some Fury Road kind of things too. That there's a great book that was a bestseller called Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, and it's Mad Max Fury Road, the wild and true story of it. I don't know if you've heard about it, but
wow, no, I haven't.
Yeah, but there's this, and I'm in one of these chapters. There's a story about, and I know this is a Looney Tunes podcast, so I don't want to take away from that. But
we all love Mad Max.
yeah,
You're good.
there was a story in there about we were trying to get him to do something after the third Mad Max that he did, which was Beyond Thunderdome, I believe. He hadn't done, anything after that, and he just couldn't come up with an idea. And so Ron Hayes, who's a brilliant toy maker, who did all my Space Jam product, and I were both Fury Road fanatics. We loved the cars and everything, and so we created all these great cars that were, and Ron enhanced it. And we went to the head of syndication of television, which was Dick Robertson, and he loved the idea of doing a syndicated series on Tribune, for Fury Road, not Fury Road, for the Mad Max, and it was like that was really exciting to the Tribune people. They said, "Wow, we'd love to do that. Can Warner's give us those rights?" And he said, "We don't know." And so Dick and I conspired, and what we did was I brought Ron Hayes. He was doing Space Jam. I had him develop 8 cars that were really from the Mad Max, but really more worse than that, and crazy kind of stuff. And we set up in my conference room, and George was on a business trip to Warner's from Australia with his colleague Doug, and we covered all the cars. And then Dick Robertson went in to pitch. They came in reluctantly, and they presented all the storyboards for its series. And he was polite. He listened and everything, but in his head, it was always either another movie or nothing, And so he said, "Okay, thank you." He says, "Dan, what's underneath this blanket?" And we lifted the blanket, and he had a huge smile on his face. And Ron, who's a brilliant toy maker, just did a whole thing about all the cars and what he did. And he took his stuff and he did this and that and everything. And George loved it. He just loved it. And he was jumping up and down. He was really happy. And he says, "I've got to go to a meeting across the street with Bob Daly, who was the president." So he left. He said, "Thank you so much." And Dick Robertson says to me, "Is he going to do the TV series?" And I said, "I don't know." And I ran out. And he's just about getting in the elevator. He hugs me, and he says, "Thank you, Dan. I love that." I said, "Are you going to do the series?" He says, "No, I'm going to do another movie." And the door shut, and that was Fury Road, which won the Oscar and everything. And it's in that book. And it was, at the time, we were all very disappointed because we thought we were going to make a fortune, having a series, a syndicated series, live action, and all the toys we could sell, so whatever. Anyway, it's a fun story,
Absolutely. And it does come back because Mad Max is parodied in the new Space Jam with Wile E. Coyote doing the chrome across his mouth.
Right. I heard, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and, Fury Road did so well. It was a very hard R-rated movie, but I think that's a huge business too. I wouldn't mind, developing some stuff with those guys too. I love them; they're great guys. So,
I love that franchise. Right. Mel started it and did a phenomenal job, and I think it's in good hands. Obviously, George Miller's been there the whole way.
Anyway, well, thank you so much, for giving me a chance to talk to you about all this stuff. I love talking about it.
I love having you, and you're always welcome to rejoin and share more stories that you've had alongside Warner Brothers, with or without these characters. And it's a joy to talk to you as always. And thank you for your time and coming back on.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank my guest, Dan Romanelli, for returning and telling those wonderful stories to all of us listeners, as well as everyone who is right now supporting the Patreon. You can find us over at This Means Podcast at patreon.com. And there's exclusive content over there, including the uncut version of this interview. So there's a bit more of the, behind the scenes of Looney Tunes Back in Action, a bit more about George Miller and the Mad Max stuff. And it's just, an overall really fun listen. And of course, you can always find me on social media over on Twitter at OFC This Means Pod and Instagram and Facebook at This Means Podcast. Be sure to like, follow, and comment with one of your favorite moments of this show or of one of the projects that we discussed, either Looney Tunes Back in Action, maybe Fury Road. What is one of your favorite Looney Tunes memories for the theatrical, experience? And remember, that's not all, folks.
Bugs is here, gotta go.
Hey, Daffy, you're right.
The usual place, Mr. Bunny?
Very good, Ryan. From now on, you and I are going to be equal partners in this thing. No more second banana for you.
Well, thanks, pal. I really appreciate this. At last, my star is rising. All my hopes and aspirations... Whoops.